Laura Trott, what's your reaction to the news from Gaza this morning?
Well, obviously, I'm tremendously pleased for each of the individual families who have got hostages back. I can't even imagine what it's been like for them to go through the past few weeks. And it's obviously incredibly positive news that they're reunited with their families. The job's not yet done. We've still got more hostages to be released. And I think our thoughts and prayers are all with those families who are still struggling with the loss of their individual family members.
Do you expect to see any British hostages appearing? Do you know anything about that?
I can't comment on individuals. Of course, we're very focused as a government on making sure that British nationals affected are reunited with their families, but I can't comment on any individual cases.
All right. We can see the spillover of the tensions here. There was another pro-Palestinian demonstration yesterday in London. There's going to be a march against anti-Semitism today. Now, it should be obviously possible for anybody to be part of both those demonstrations. They're not one against the other. But how concerned are you about the growing tensions on our streets?
I'm very concerned about people, particularly Jewish people, not feeling safe on the streets. I think it is right that the police take all necessary actions to make sure that people are able to walk about their home city without fear. And the police are obviously operationally independent, but I know this is something that the Prime Minister and Home Secretary have been talking to the police a lot about.
Would you, if you took off your ministerial hat for a moment, would you consider being on today's demonstration yourself?
I'm in government and I'm focused on being in government. I think it is really important that we recognise the cause of this conflict, which is the terrorist atrocities that Hamas perpetrated on October 7th. I think it's right, as we've gone through this, that we've always emphasised that Israel must act within international law. And it's also right that the Foreign Secretary was out in Gaza and is in Israel this week, making sure that we can get humanitarian aid.
Yeah, but that's not what I'm asking you about. If you're in the Jewish community today, one of the things that you, or they tell me, that they feel very strongly is that at this moment, when they feel they need friends, people are absent. And one way of signalling that you are not absent would be to be on a march against anti-Semitism, which one imagines should be non-political. So let me ask you again, would you consider, if you had the time, would you be on that demonstration yourself?
Of course I am, and the entire government is against anti-Semitism. You can see that in the way that we have acted.
Well, why not show it?
I think that a hypothetical on whether I go on a march or not, I'm not going to answer, but I think my direction is very clear.
But it's... sorry to pressure on it, but if I were Jewish, I would be asking myself, why is it not possible for a government minister to say that I or one or more of my colleagues would be able to spend half an hour showing solidarity with my community?
The reason I'm not directly answering your question is because I haven't seen the details of the march. I don't know who's on it. I don't know who's organising it. So for me to say I'd be on it or not is not
Campaign against anti-Semitism.
Of course, I want to campaign against anti-Semitism. That is something that I feel is completely part of my political life and my political mission. But I don't want to comment on something that I don't know the details of. All
right, I'll get you the details. Let's turn to your actual job. You're now the new Chief Secretary to the Treasury. Your boss, the Chancellor, gave his autumn statement on Wednesday.
He did.
And in that statement, he relied on the Office for Budget Responsibility's predictions that net migration would fall from over 600,000 last year to less than 250,000 in 4 years. Well, let's look at reality. On Thursday, it was revealed by the ONS that last year's actual number of net migration was nearly 750,000. And this year, it's likely to be pretty much the same again. Let me just first ask you, are those numbers too high?
Yes, they are too high. We, as a government, want to bring them down to more sustainable levels. I note that the ONS said that they are trending down. And the Prime Minister took...
trending down from 750,000 to just a bit under 700,000.
They are, but that's why we took some of the strongest action ever in May to bring down the numbers by reducing the number of dependents that a student can bring over, which is going to come live from January.
But let's have a look at the actual graph for the last few years of this. This may seem rather familiar to you? There it goes, trucking along at about 300,000 until we hit, oh, hello, Brexit, 2016, and then woof, off it goes. Now, if this is what let's control our borders looks like, that doesn't seem to me what was promised.
There have been some very specific circumstances in the last couple of years.
I know, Ukraine.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think most people at home would recognise and support what we did, which is to bring over a large number of Ukrainian refugees,
yeah, but we
as well as people from Hong Kong.
Yeah,
right?
but we didn't bring over 500,000 over that period of time.
So
that number is going up. Yep. It's trending up.
Yes.
You're never going to hit the 250,000 that the Chancellor talked about on Wednesday by 2027. So your numbers are all wrong.
No, the other couple of things that I would highlight as a result of those that have caused those numbers to go up have been the increasing number of student dependents. That's why we've taken the action that we have. That will affect over 150,000 of that number. And then in addition, obviously, we need to do more to make sure that British people are taking jobs. And that is a huge push from the autumn statement this week.
I want to come back to the effect of that in a second, but let me just say, so one thing you'll do is to say you can only have one dependent with you if you're a student,
yep.
right? It's one thing. The other thing, proposed by, amongst others, one Boris Johnson, is let's discourage employers from recruiting immigrants by making them more expensive. No visas for anyone earning less than £40,000, says Mr Johnson. Do you agree with him?
So the government is looking at measures to bring migration down further, and also we will always stop exploitation of the system. But the measures that we've taken so far, we think will have a significant effect. And also, I will point again to the measures that we took in the autumn statement this week, which is increasing the number of British workers that we have to take these jobs. Yeah,
but the point I'm just asking is, will you increase the threshold at which a visa can be granted?
So the government is looking at a number of options at the moment, but the ones that we have published, and we've already said that we're going to do, which will make a difference, is getting 200,000 more British people into jobs every year.
You're not taking Boris Johnson's advice. Is that because the man who's offering this advice introduced a point system that turbocharged the numbers of non-EU migrants from 179,000 in 2021 to 768,000 last year?
What I'm saying is there are lots of people who have put forward a lot of proposals. The government is looking at all of those, but I would point to what we have already done, which is the biggest package of measures in May to crack down on migration, and then the measures that we've taken in the last week to increase the number of British workers.
Let me just give you the chance to agree with Mr Johnson when he said in his column on Friday...
Thank you so much, Treasure. That's very kind.
Well, I always want to bring harmony. Let me see if you agree with Mr Johnson that change to the point system in 2021 that lifted the numbers from under 200,000 to nearly 800,000 non-EU migrants was a mistake.
We have a point system now, which means that we are in control of who comes into this country. So that is why we are saying that the numbers are too high and we're taking steps to bring them down. That is also why we're taking the steps that we have taken on illegal migration to bring those numbers down too.
But the 2021 scheme was a mistake, says Johnson. You agree with him?
I think having a points-based system which controls who comes into this country is very important, and it gives us the levers to bring the numbers down.
All right, well, look, you want to make the migrants more expensive. You want to stop them bringing their dependents in. There is a problem here, isn't there? Without this level of immigration, we'd have no functioning health service. The social care sector would be even more of a disaster zone than it is. I mean, you can say that you're going to do all these things, but there is a cost here. Hospitality would become a wasteland. Are you saying that come what may, even if employers begin to struggle and your promise of growth gets torpedoed because nobody can find anybody to do the work, that you're going to bring down the numbers come what may?
I'm not just saying this, Trevor. I'm telling you that we have a plan to make sure that this is the case. That is why, in the autumn statement, we took steps to ensure that people have to work if they can work, That is why we've got a long-term NHS workforce plan, which is investing in the training places that we need for domestic doctors and nurses. And that is why we introduced a £600 million fund to increase the number of social care workers from this country for training them up. We're taking concrete steps. I'm not just sitting here and telling you that we are going to wish the numbers to come down. We are taking concrete steps to make sure that that is the case.
I hear all that, but you're not going to get those, whatever it is, 2 million people or thereabouts that you're thinking about back into work immediately. And my point is, you can't have it both ways. You can't say that you want growth and you want growth within the next year or so, and at the same time say you're going to choke off the supply of labour. So what's your choice going to be?
But these steps that we've taken in the last week will have a very near-term impact. We're talking about looking at the long-term unemployed and making sure that they get intensive support after 6 months. Okay. That will make a big difference in the near term. And also, the Independent Office for Budgetary Responsibility have said that as a result of the big tax cut that we're giving 27 million workers in the UK, the NICS cut, we will have 92,000 people more in work. That, again, is a concrete step that we are taking to address the issues that I've outlined.
All right, let's just ask you one other thing. The Prime Minister says this morning the Rwanda plan is still absolutely central to the government's policies on immigration. Well, you say it is. The Home Secretary yesterday said in an interview that we shouldn't get fixated on the Rwanda policy because it is not, quote, the be-all and end-all. The missions to stop the boats don't fixate on the method. Who is right, Prime Minister or Home Secretary?
Well, they're both actually saying the same thing, which is that Rwanda is part of our plan.
No, it's central. One says don't get fixated on it.
Trevor, but they're both saying that it is part of the plan. It is not all of the plan. You know, we have successfully, in the last year, brought the numbers of people coming over here illegally down by a third. That is at a time when the numbers coming into Europe are up by 80%. This was not a foregone conclusion. It is because of actions that we have taken on illegal immigration that the numbers have come down, and they will continue to do so because we are going to take steps like Rwanda to make sure that they come down further.
All right, I'm putting Chief Secretary in the Home Secretary's column on this one because you seem to be saying don't get too fraught about it. Let me just ask you another...
Part of a plan. I think that is what the Prime Minister was saying this morning, and that is what the Home Secretary was saying.
Let me just ask you one question about the end of this. We've seen about this area. We've seen the advance of what might be called non-conventional anti-immigration parties in Sweden, France, Italy, Germany. This week in Holland, Mr. Geert Wilders won the election at the expense of conventional centre-right parties like your own. Are you worried about being outflanked by Nigel Farage and Reform?
No. One of the reasons that is important...
Reform is polling at 10% today.
Look, and I'd be very clear that a vote for Reform or any other party which is not Conservative is a vote for Keir Starmer as Prime Minister. But what I would say is one of the reasons it's so important for me to come on shows like yours is for us to communicate as a government what we are doing to stop the boats, which we are absolutely determined to do, and to bring the numbers of migrations down.
All right. Now, the Chancellor made a big song and dance about his 2p cut. You don't need to make the case for that.
Rightly so.
But the rise in pay levels over the past 2 years has taken millions of people into 40% rate bands. So you're giving with one hand and taking away with other. In fact, there'll be a lot of people who actually will end up paying more tax now rather than less. This isn't a tax cut at all.
Yes, it is.
You're still running a tax bill 37% of GDP.
So, a couple of things I would say to that. Firstly, your average worker, their taxes are £1,000 a year less than they were in 2010. We have had to make some difficult decisions to pay back our COVID debts. You know, we spent £400 billion supporting people's livelihoods during COVID. I think that was the right thing to do. We spent £100 billion last year supporting people through the energy crisis, the right thing to do. We've got to pay back our COVID debts. And we've had to take difficult decisions in order to do that. But as a result of those decisions, the economy, inflation is now down, we have turned a corner, and that is why we can take steps to bring the tax burden down. But
you're not bringing the tax burden down. Let's have a look at what you're actually doing. Look at this. I mean, you know this graph better than anybody. You're the Chief Secretary to the Treasury. We are now at the highest tax burden since 1948. That's before I was born and dinosaurs roamed the earth then. I mean, honestly... You are increasing taxes, not cutting them.
What we did at the autumn statement this week is the biggest tax-cutting measures since the 1980s. They brought the burden down by 0.7. But we know that we've had to pay back our COVID debts. That is something, by the way, that the Labour Party opposed. But we are now taking action to bring down the tax burden.
OK, let me deal with the Labour Party. OK, all right. Look, you're saying you're going to do this in principle. And I noticed that the Chancellor was quite hazy about when the next tax cuts might come. I'm not going to ask you to tell me when, but could the conditions that you set for more tax cuts occur before the next election, let's say in a year's time, before next autumn?
We don't comment on future fiscal events.
I'm just asking whether it's possible. You're the person who knows.
We don't comment on future fiscal events, but what I would say is that we have set a direction of travel to grow the economy, to support businesses and to reward work, and we want to bring that tax burden down over time in a responsible way. And I would contrast that with the Labour Party, who refuse to pay back our COVID debts, say that they support us in bringing down tax, but then also want to borrow an extra £28 billion over the course of the next Parliament,
well, they say not
which
yet.
is... Well, I mean, this is no way to make credible economic policy. These people want to run the country and they've got no idea what they're doing about borrowing. They're saying they're going to bring it up.
All right.
It is fiscal irresponsibility on steroids, Trevor.
All right. Laura Trott, I am sure we're going to have this conversation and many more like it. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.